Well, hi, everybody. My name is Bethany Jett, and I'm one of the co-owners of Serious Writer. And today on our podcast, we are so thrilled to have Rachel Wojo with us. She is an author, a creative, an entrepreneur, a speaker. Her accolades are many, and we're just super thrilled to have her here for this very faith-filled episode where we're going to talk about prayer and talk a little bit about, I hope, about your upcoming book, which is titled Desperate Prayers Embracing the Power of Prayer in Life's Darkest Moments, which is coming out in October of this year. So, congratulations. And then our topic for today is what you had sent me. I absolutely loved, and you had phrased it so perfectly about dropping prayer, perfectionism, and guilt and enjoying a powerful prayer life. So, I am thrilled to welcome you back and hear your three tips and kind of talk about how you're going to navigate prayer with publishing and with writers. And anyway, thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you, Bethany, for having me. I appreciate Serious Writers Podcast so much and all that you are doing to offer awesome content in order to help people move forward in their writing. My book is Desperate Prayers, Embracing the Power of Prayer in Life's Darkest Moments. And as we look at the topic of dropping prayer perfectionism, I think it resonates with all of us on some level because if you have been in church a long time, then you've heard all the prayers of the centuries. The usher who had all the these and thous in the exact appropriate places. You heard the little grandma who sounded like heaven was going to come down any minute when she was praying. And then perhaps as a child, you learned just the simple prayers of saying grace, God bless our food. You may have had some prayers that you said at nighttime. And I think all of the liturgical prayers that we learn are awesome. There are so many lessons that can be learned through developing that habit and routine of prayer. But all of that has a tendency to make us think that there can only be one right way. And I think the other part most of us can relate to is the fact that even though we know there can be more than one way, when we are in tough circumstances, when things go south, when things go awry, when life gets hard, including loss, including pain, including disease and suffering, when those things happen, that's at the point where we are often inhibited in our prayer lives because we think we have to pray a certain way. And so it gets down to those hard spaces, and we might just look at God and sit there and say nothing or do nothing because we're unsure. We don't know if we should turn to Him or not. We're wondering where He is in this long legacy of our Christian lives. And then some of us maybe haven't been Christians for very long. And so we haven't learned the liturgies. We haven't had the background of saying all of the prayers a certain way or hearing others say the prayers a certain way. But we have another problem, and that is that we just don't know what to pray. And so I've really felt like in life's darkest moments, we have this pivotal opportunity to either turn to God or turn away from Him. And whether you're a Christian or not, whether you have been a Christian a long time or a short time, you reach that point and you say, oh, wow. I don't, sometimes it happens so quickly, like with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing there to pull from. You don't know what to do. And so, my encouragement in this book really is to help others embrace that power of prayer when life is hard, to embrace it and just to say, I'm at rock bottom, Lord, and this is a good place to be because I know that you're the only one in control and you're the only one who can help me. To give a little background to my heart behind this book, Bethany, you know that I had a daughter named Taylor who was very bouncy little girl. She had pigtails and was just absolutely gorgeous. Walked into a room and heads always turned. At the age of 4, she was given a rare metabolic diagnosis called mucopolysaccharidosis. And this disease is neurologically degenerative. Her type is called Sanfilippo syndrome, and that is often subtitled as the childhood Alzheimer's. So most people, when I frame it that way, can understand that neurologically she would be losing every skill that she ever learned. And this was progressive over her life. She lived to age 22. We're very blessed. The average lifespan is 10 to 15 years. So God gave us lots of extra with her. But to sit at her bedside and watch her suffer all of those years and try to care for her and live through that with her, it really gave me the opportunity to make that pivotal choice I just talked about, where I could run to God or run away from him. And what I found, I chose to run to him. There were some times where I stiff-armed him. And you know
Yeah.
that how you keep him close enough to where he can still hear you and you're sure he's there, but you hold him at a distance. We've all been there before. But I found that when I just turned to him and gave him my verbal vomit, it was much better than when I tried to hold it all in. And so my prayers were not perfect by any means. I mean, I remember one day standing by Taylor's bed and I was so mad at God for letting her suffer. And I said to God, he could handle it. And I said to him, "You don't know what it's like to watch your child suffer and die." And because the Lord and I had such an intimate relationship, he immediately whispered to my heart, "Oh, yes, I do. I watched my son suffer and die for you."
Mm,
And I was just stopped in my tracks. And I said, "Lord, help me walk through this, help me journey through this." And that became such the cry of my heart that I really wanted to share
mm,
that journey. So I developed these 3-word prayers that are very simple, just 3 words. For example, here's one of the 15: God, help me. God,
mm,
help me. And it's such a simple prayer, but the reason why it helps us so much is because we return to a focus. We return to just being able to have guidance. But when you say God in that prayer, you're admitting he's sovereign and I'm not.
mm,
He's the creator of the universe. I'm not. He's in control. I'm not. And so that's the first piece of it. In the help, you're saying, "Lord, I need outside power. This is
mm,
beyond human strength. This is beyond where we can be right now." And when you're in tough situations, even if it's not a life and death situation, there are many times, financial, physical, mental health, all of those areas where we struggle and experience difficulties. The Lord just meets us there. And when we say help, we're admitting we are fragile. We cannot do this. And then the me part of that prayer is just to surrender. So in 3 words, we have moved into we've moved into a position of allowing God to be who he is and admitting who we are not. And that is the transformative power of prayer, is allowing God to be who he is and admitting we are not him. And so I pray that this book is really a tool that people can use to help them in times of crisis, but then also to build that relationship, to build that prayer muscle memory
mhm.
so that when you get in those situations in the future, it's an automatic. You don't have to have that pivotal moment where you're choosing, do I turn to God or do I run away? Your instinct will be turn to the Lord, and everything in your being will cry and move towards him. So that is the prayer of my heart for everyone listening, for them to be able to receive this. I know this is the Serious Writers podcast, and you guys are are a great community of both faith believers and writers. So I did want to share just 3 tips in the post editing process of this book that I thought might be helpful for your audience. The first one is to be persistent. And by that, I mean, if you don't know what the next step is, whether you're a first time writer or you're at a new publishing house or whatever your particular situation is with your book, then I would say being persistent means to just not be afraid to ask questions and understand where the process is going. Some of us have greater experience than others in this area, but I feel like at the beginning, I really needed that encouragement to be persistent and to ask the questions so that I could be ahead. And then, so after you turn the book in, a lot of us as writers think that that's the end of the road, and
Yeah.
that's like just the beginning of the road.
It's just getting started once you turn that book in. It is
Yeah,
not
it feels
over.
like such a milestone. And then the next day you're like, oh boy, here comes the work.
Yeah.
um, and then the second piece of the tip that I wanted to give to the writers post editing is to be punctual. So make sure you're staying on top of your email. And as the process starts on the publisher side and they start feeding information to you, that you're giving immediate responses so that you can be a part of the conversations, because things happen quickly and you don't want to be off your email 3, 4, 5 days and not respond. I feel like immediate responses in this stage are pretty necessary. So you don't want to miss out on anything. And then, especially when you get to, I said post editing, but even the marketing phase, I believe that that is where it really begins to be important to be punctual and to stay on top of your email, because those publicity opportunities might be coming in, those podcast tour opportunities might be coming in, and you're trying to work on your schedule, getting those in. So you really want to be on top of that. And then the last tip, so be persistent, be punctual, and then be proactive. Be proactive. And the reason I say that is because you want to be sure in the marketing stage that you're not relying on the publisher to do all the marketing or all the publicity. Most of us know this, but we want to take an inventory of what assets do I have that I can be very proactive with. So who is in my network? Who are the podcasters that I'm already friends with? Who are those people that I sat by at the conference table not long ago? Who could I connect with who's already in my circle of friends who might have an opportunity for me to get the word out on this book? So, anybody that you've blogged for before, having that all mapped out in advance and being proactive then after that book is turned in to start reaching out and saying, hey, my book is releasing October 8th. I just wondered if this is a good fit for your audience, and really pitching yourself to your intimate circle so that you can make those connections. I wanted to share a quick story to help you
Yeah.
understand, I feel like, the importance of all this. And this is where I'll pivot into talking about an audiobook. You're the first audience that I get to share this story with, but it is pretty cool. So I did exactly what I just shared with you. I was proactive. I was persistent. I was punctual, but I was proactive because I saw that the publicity side of my publisher, they had their hands full and they could do the best that they could do, but I still needed to do my part and be helpful to them and be persistent. So I did exactly what I just shared with you. I connected with my contacts. I sent pitches to them. I sent emails. I sent texts. I said, hey, my book's coming out. Do you have an opportunity for me to share it on your podcast or be on your blog, or, all of those opportunities? And I just asked. I proactively ask. And because I have relationships with these people, because we have been in the industry for a while, and I've been to conferences and I've been rubbing elbows with these people and helping them with their materials and promoting their books, it was an easy yes back to me because I had been linking arms with them for a while. And so what happened then I found was that I started getting these podcast opportunities and I started getting these blog opportunities and all of these ways to get the word out on other people's platforms started to roll in. So I made a list of those and I thought, well, I don't want the publicity department of the publisher to be trying to contact the people that I've already made
Mm-hmm.
connections with. So I need to send them this list. And I sent them the list. And they came back to me with, Rachel, this is so awesome. You have done so much work that normally is on us to do. Would you put your dates in of when these are going to be recorded or released so that we can send it over to the sales department?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I absolutely will do that. So I did it and I sent it back to them. And then, of course, because while that's all happening and I'm staying punctual, I'm staying on top of my email, more opportunities are coming in. So pretty soon I have this list and I've sent it over to sales. And 2 days later, they come back to me with a question. Now, mind you, 4 months ago, I had asked the publisher, will I get to do an audiobook? I really would love to do an audiobook. And they said, no, sorry, that's not available, and all the reasons why. So I had to be at peace with that.
Mm-hmm.
But after this list was sent over to sales, sales came back 2 days later and they said to me, we have we've been offered an offer to have your audiobook published by, they want to purchase the rights. This company wants to purchase the rights and they want to do your audiobook. And so after all of that time of thinking I wouldn't get the chance to do an audiobook because of these 3 tips that I just shared with you, being persistent and punctual and proactive and really doing what I knew to do and not expecting someone else to carry the full load. Here I sat with this opportunity to now have an audiobook. In addition to that, here's what blows me away. This is just how good the Lord is. I have an agent, and Bethany, this will, to your credit right here, this is why it's important to have an agent. I was willing, honestly, to do this audiobook for free because I was so excited about the opportunity to do an audiobook. I
I'm
was just
shaking my
like,
head.
I'm sending my demo over but my agent is like, whoa, 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 hold up.
Right.
You might want to get paid for doing this narration because it is a lot of work.
It's a lot.
And so she went to bat for me. And within a day or two later, it was like, okay, yes, we will contract you to be the narrator. You sent your,
Yay.
so all of that to say, wow, God is good.
Yeah.
But also, whoa, we have to do our part. We do have to work. And so I'm praying that all that I've said today on both sides of both faith and prayer and the publishing side is really a benefit to your audience and that you'll be encouraged to know that the Lord works behind the scenes. He's always working. We never know what opportunities are going to come our way. And that is why our side is the character side of being persistent, being punctual, and just being proactive. Because when we do our part and he's doing his part, you just don't know what kind of things will happen. So I pray that's encouraging to someone. It was an answer to prayer that I got to do the audiobook, but honestly, I had thought that I wouldn't get to. I had made peace with the fact that I wouldn't get to. And so it was like the Lord just honored both my faithfulness and my work, and then also his beautiful way of doing things when we when we just don't know how things are going to work out. So I think that concludes what I have to share for today, and I pray that you are blessed by it. I will be happy to answer any questions, Bethany.
Okay, this was so wonderful. And I was taking notes like the whole time. So, okay, can we go? I have a couple.
Yes,
Let's go
absolutely.
back. Is for anyone who is either not a believer or in a different denomination where they don't do like the traditional prayers, because you mentioned the liturgical prayers, can you kind of explain what that is?
So, liturgical prayers are written prayers that have been written by someone else, often based on the Psalms or other scriptures, and they are just prayers that you read. And so, if you haven't, I grew up in an evangelical world, so I was never really familiar with liturgical prayers until I became an adult and started expanding my own reading. So, hopefully, that answers that question.
Yeah, no, that was great. And then it's interesting too. I love all the P words you had in here. Just to recap, um the three tips that you were giving: be persistent, be punctual, be proactive. But you also talked about having to make peace and be at peace with that too. So it's a fourth little P word in there, which I thought was great. I love that we're talking about post editing. Like, I feel like this is such a murky area because
Mm,
it doesn't get talked about a lot. That's what I mean
right,
by
right.
murky. Like, nothing sinister is happening behind the scenes. It's just the, you signed a contract, and everyone's excited for you in your life. And now it goes into, like, you go into this kind of quiet valley now where you're
Right.
just having to hustle to get everything done on time so that the production can be on time. Like, I love
Mhm.
that. I love um the email and then understanding the process. So can you I'm kind of really throwing you a sort of a question
Oh,
out of
that's okay.
for the writers who are kind of new to this and haven't gone through the publishing process, can you kind of explain, once you sign that contract, kind of like what those next steps are, this post editing? You did touch on it quite a bit, but kind of give them, like, how's it been for you moving through that process?
Sure. And I think every publishing house is a little different on
Yes.
this, which is what makes it challenging for writers because I can't say to you, okay, next will be A, B, C, D, E, F, G,
Right.
and just list it out. This is the normal way because every house has their own in-house processes. And there are multiple things happening at the same time. You've turned your book in as a final to your editor, and your editor may say, okay, thank you so much. The next step is, but then what they don't tell you is, like clockwork, there will be all sorts of parts of the publishing team kicking into gear and beginning to figure out the other back house details of your book. For example, what it will look like on Amazon and what those details need to be. And then all of the distribution into the retail stores and online retailers and all of that information in the back end is set up. It doesn't just magically appear on christianbook.com, right? There's some work that happens to get all of that there. And that's what the publishing house is working on. And depending on the size of the house, a lot of houses are smaller now and their staff is lean. And so they are wearing multiple hats trying to do, the job of 3 or 4 people. That's why I would say that rather than looking at it like, oh, the publishing house is the enemy during this time, because I do see a lot of writers who just feel like they're left out in the dark. I think the key to combating that is just saying, I'm a part of the team. What can I do that would make your job easier? How can I be proactive to help? I don't want to ask too many questions. I don't want to send you a million emails and bother you. But if there's something that you can assign to me as part of the team, I would be happy to do that. A lot of times, I think that's sort of the vague area between when the book is actually finished and you've done your part as a writer, you've got this final manuscript complete, until book release date. It feels like a pretty vague outline of time. And there's a lot that can be done. I think that it's important to educate yourself as a writer to know what can be done during that time so that you understand that it's a process and it's often customized according to house.
Yep.
So making yourself available and being a team player is really important.
Super important. And just to kind of touch on some of the details that you might get asked pretty quickly, like, it could be right away, it could be later. You finished your manuscript, but there's those other pages of the book that need to be included, like the acknowledgments page, the dedication page, who's actually going to come up with the endorsements, as in who's actually going to give you one, because you probably sent a list in of ones you can get. And now so all of those things, the team is thinking about the layout. They're thinking about how the book's going to go in as it's going to editing. I love that and thankful that you mentioned how many moving pieces there are that we don't see as the
Right.
agent, as the author. It's kind of a mystery at times, and this is one of those industries where it is so slow until it isn't. It is
Right.
wait, and then it's hurry up and wait, and multiple times until that book releases.
Yeah. And I saw a question there about the question was, do you do podcasts before your book releases or wait until after? So you can do it both ways. I try to record as many as I can beforehand and ask the podcaster if they can time it to be closer to the release date. I don't mind if they release it even before because I have a pre-order that's happening. But at the beginning of the podcast recording, I will ask them, hey, do you know when you're planning to release this? And most of the time they say, what would work well for you? And so then I say, well, as close to the release date as you can get it. I do have a pre-order opportunity if we would like to talk about that. But if you want it to be sort of oh, something that lasts more than just for the pre-order season, a podcast that they can come back to and it can be evergreen and they can use it again, promote it again, even you can promote it again. So to make it more evergreen, maybe don't talk about the pre-order, but give people an opportunity to go order. The other thing is if you do talk about the pre-order, if someone listens to it afterwards, after that pre-order date, they're going to know it's available. So that part is okay as well. But to answer your question, that is one of the ways that I have tried to use this season. Although the book is not releasing until October 8th, I am doing podcast recordings right now, just like this one.
It's so smart. I love that you said that about making it evergreen. It's so hard sometimes when there's like a date or an event coming up that gets mentioned in the podcast. And then as soon as you're listening to it, everything is pertinent until then. And all of a sudden you feel like you're listening to something that was really old and is no longer of the immediate value. So such a smart tip on there. I wanted to go back to something that you said. I love that the connection between your podcast list and the audiobook that is now suddenly available is not surprising, considering what you brought to them were people who are willing to listen, because podcast is
Right.
listening, unless you're watching the video of the podcast on YouTube or somewhere, but those are listeners. And so it directly tied in to how then they could say, okay, well, if this many people are willing to listen, then there's possibly a good chance that those people are going to want the audiobook. That tie-in is so beautiful. And I just wanted to make sure we highlighted that work was so important to them to be able to have the conversation about moving ahead.
Exactly. Hmm.
Really thinking about who your audience is and um, the demographic of the audience. It's so important. I was talking to an editor today at a publishing house. We were talking about platform and for the different types of books, how different platforms matter to the demographic that they're going after because they have different buying wants and needs. And to that way, every house has their own platform, social media platforms that they like or they give more weight to. And so
Hmm.
that's important to know too, as you're building your own platforms for your books, that it matches the demographic, and then the publishing house that is looking at those demographics and valuing them highly. um,
Right.
so much that
Right.
goes into this, isn't it?
Yes, and I do want to say too that with that podcasting and audiobook connection, I think that what you said earlier about this is such a slow industry, I think podcasting and audiobooks are also slow industries. Podcasting, to grow a podcast takes so much time. I've been podcasting for 3 years. So it takes those deposits of time. And that goes back to what I said about the character of being persistent, being punctual, and being proactive, because it's a slow burn. Most people who listen to audiobooks are going to listen to them over the course of a time period. They're not going to devour it in one sitting. They're going to listen to it back and forth as they journey to work or as they take a trip, business trip, or even a vacation. So, what then happens is they listen to that audiobook and they say, "Oh my word, you've got to hear this audiobook that I just listened to." I'm guilty. I'm not a big audiobook listener. I love to read books, but this summer I listened to an audiobook and I keep telling everyone about it because I'm just like, this was such a great book. And I'm not sure if I had read the book, if I would have gotten the author's sarcasm as much. And so hearing his voice and hearing his intonation was just such a delight. It was so cool. So that, yes, that definitely ties it all together for you. Your demographic, your understanding of your demographics behavior, and how they will process the material that you've given to them.
I'm with you. Like I love to read them, but I haven't been I think when I'm listening to an audiobook at home, my mind starts getting invested in what I'm doing. So then I stop
Mhm.
listening to the book. So I usually have like a TV show playing that I don't have to listen to or pay attention to. But in the car ride to visit my son, we kept choosing middle grade audiobooks because they're almost always safe for everybody in the car. And the narrator of the Bellwoods game, which I've talked about on the Serious Writer, to our patrons, I am obsessed with that narrator now. I want to listen to everything she's done because she brought it alive in such a way that I wouldn't, as I'm listening, I'm thinking I would not have had those voices in my head if I was as I'm thinking about
Right.
the words she's saying. It was fantastic. Can
Yeah.
you share your favorite book that you've been telling everyone?
Oh, sure. Yes, I will share it. So, the name of the book is How to Stay Married, the Most Insane Love Story Ever Told. It is written by a Christian man about his wife's infidelity,
Mm.
and it will keep you on your toes. I will admit to you that there is some foul language in there, appropriately used, I will say. But there were times where my ears were cringing because I have soft ears, and I was just like, dude, you could have slacked off a little bit on that.
Right.
But like I said, it was appropriate, and he is a Christian man, so it really makes you think. The writing itself comes from such a comedic place, which is not what you would anticipate for the title of the book or for the style of the book. And it makes me want to go back now and listen to some of his other books. So I plan to do that.
Yep. It's interesting that I didn't realize until maybe a year or two ago, having conversations with, I always, we have our people in the industry. I think, their agents, their editors, I kind of like lump them based on their job, I guess, like other authors. And then I have like, oh, their readers, like they're just the normals. Like they're just people that love books that aren't like involved in the business. So I was having a conversation with friends who are not authors or in the industry, but they were talking about following audio book narrators. I had never even considered the fact, and now I understand why. Caitlin
Mhm.
Kelly, I think, is the name of the woman who's did such a good job. But and how that in their purchasing choices will follow the narrator. So it's it's very cool to see that side is so important to the readers too. Because as a writer, I don't think about that side of it. As an agent, now I'm thinking about that for my client.
Right.
How
Right.
cool that you get to do your own book. That's wonderful. Can you tell us again when it's releasing? Which I know this makes this a little bit not evergreen, but it's great, great content. Where can people get the book today?
Right. So the best place to go to visit is desperateprayers.com. It's just that simple. DesperatePrayers.com. You'll see all the material there. You can pre-order the book right now. It does release October 8th, 2024. And anyone listening within before that time, there are some pre-order bonuses available, gifts that I would love for you to have if you do the pre-order. Pre-orders, Bethany, are important because they help the publisher understand what kind of demand this book has. And so if you love an author, I mean, this is Serious Writers Podcast. If there's an author that you love, if you're listening to this podcast, then you're a reader too, because all writers are readers, right? So if there's an author that you love, make sure you follow them on Amazon, like Bethany just mentioned with the narrators, and make sure that you pre-order if you're planning to order their book, because that really helps the world understand that this is a message that resonates and that it helps get it in the hands of more people who need that same content. So that's what you're doing by being proactive and making that choice. But I just really, like anyone else, believe that the Lord had me write this message for a reason. And so if you are the person who's heard this podcast today and you resonated with any of the material, then I would love to meet you at DesperatePrayers.com.
I love that. Thank you for being our guest and sharing your heart and these tips. This was so valuable and really inspiring. And I love the way you talked about the 3-word prayers, one of 15. And now I'm so intrigued. I need the other 14. So I'm excited about your book. Thanks, Rachel. And I hope to see you at a conference soon.
Thank you, Bethany.